Hey guys, Mongoose Guns. Today I want to do a quick review on this down to the fence product. This is the Omega Rail. These come in both the Picatinny version and also the M-LOK. So today I just want to break down pros and cons of this item, and then in the end I'll also do a quick little run through of how to install it. This is the package it comes in. It has instructions on the back how to install, but I felt like when I installed it for the first time, it was kind of missing a few key details. So if you just want to watch that part, I'll put a timestamp in the description so you can just skip right to that installation part. But this is how the item comes. It's just a pretty succinct little package. And when you open it up, basically that's how this looks. Now, I actually got this a few years ago, but saved the packaging. So this is pretty much what it looks like when you open it up. That's the rail. There's nothing really in there. And that is how it looks. Now this bag, that's my bag, but I just put the original parts in there just to keep them. And then yeah, that's how the rail looks. So as I'm sure you know, this is a two-piece rail, a little bit loose right now just because I have these screws not really tight. But that is how it locks together. So the top piece here has the three rails, and then the bottom piece just has that bottom rail. So once you tighten these down, it locks up super tight. There's really no movement at all. And the other four screws are here. And this interfaces with the regular GI barrel nut that you'd find on any, typical AR-15. I think now they go for about 226 bucks. Back in the day, they were maybe a little under 200, so it's a little more economical back then. But, now it is kind of a chunk of cash. And really the question comes down to whether or not free floating your rifle is really worth it, especially for a carbine rifle. I think the other 7-inch free float rails that do require a gunsmith, where you gotta install a whole new barrel nut, I think those are overkill. But this one's nice because in a way it's just like any other drop-in quad rail that you install. So just for that reason alone, the free floated aspect is a plus. I wouldn't say that's like, the main attractive feature to this handguard. So overall, it really does offer you a lot in a pretty simple design. Taking apart, this is what the rail looks like. So if I zoom in for you guys here, you can kind of see the details of the rail. You see on the edges here, they kind of cut out a little bit to save on weight. And then of course you have the milling in here, and it's all marked. So the right is all marked, and you got the top marks up here and the left. A couple of the features, so this has a nice, it's kind of like a cover, so it connects to the upper receiver, and this is where the delta ring is going to be. So it's kind of nice because it kind of integrates that top rail with your upper receiver. And you also have a QD point attachment for a sling, and they're just in the back, they're not in the front. This is for that screw, so you just have one in the back there, which is good. It's better than nothing. And that's pretty much how it looks. The bottom part, pretty basic. A couple design features I think are cool. It's got the American flag there, so it's kind of adds like a little artistic piece to your rifle. Those are the details of the rail itself right there, and that is pretty much all there is to it. When you put this together, I think I was a little bit surprised when I first saw it. When you look at it from the front of the back, it really is like an oval shape. And that could be an important point to note, because for a rail like this, again, I think the performance of it is not going to be the most important point. The ergonomics are going to be a little bit more important. That's what's going to have more of an effect on your shooting. And for me, I like a rounded handguard, and so that was one of the cons for me of how oval it is. You could fix that if you put some big panels, either from Magpul or Knight's Armament, on the left and right. That could make it a little more circular. And also another thing I forgot to mention, this rail, it does come with four of the Magpul ladders. Actually, I don't have those anymore, but this way it does make it a little more ergonomic. The rails aren't super sharp, but you can easily shoot it without any kind of panels on here, but it does make it feel a little bit more nice. On that note, I do also want to mention, if you're installing this, that the rail lengths are all just a little bit different. So when you're cutting the Magpul ladders, just keep that in mind. So the left and the right are the same length, but if you'll see here, the bottom is just one rail longer, one more slot there, and then also the top is a little bit longer. So when I originally installed this, I cut them all to be the left and right length, and then I realized, I mean, you know, obviously it's not really a big deal, but I just realized I had a couple wasted parts there. I could have just kept those a little bit longer to fill up every single slot. When you compare this to just a standard handguard, this is how it sort of compares. Most of these are going to be a little bit more circular. Even the low profile handguards, they're just a little bit more circular than this one, which is more oval. So ironically, when I shoot both of these, I actually kind of prefer this handguard just from an ergonomics perspective. It just kind of fits my hand better. I like that circular grip. And I think that kind of tightens up my groups, even though, you know, it's not free floated. Now, the alternative to getting a free float rail like this is to get a drop-in. I've tried some of the drop-in rails in the market, such as Midwest and Troy, and they really don't lock up nearly as tight. I found there's always a little bit of a play, mostly in the bottom rail going back and forth, but sometimes there's a little bit of rotational movement as well. So this makes that stand out in the sense that it's just much more solid than anything else out there. The only other option, I think, for a solid quad rail is going to be the one that I use. So this is what I used to have on here, and then I swapped it out actually for this is the you know, the Knights Armament quad rail, the one that the military uses. And the reason why I chose this one, even though it's not free floated, is because it kind of fixes everything I didn't like about the down of the fence. It combines basically what you have in the down of the fence Omega rail with like a basic handguard like this, because you'll see the profile of it is much more circular, and that's exactly what I like. And then it fixes the problem with the length, so it goes all the way to the edge, which is good. It doesn't have any kind of cover here, but that's kind of more of an aesthetic thing than a functional thing. So I would say this rail is superior, at least in ergonomics, but in terms of performance, there probably really isn't any kind of a noticeable difference. The first step to installing this is going to be sliding in the bottom rail. I found it doesn't really matter if you do the top or the bottom first. I think typically when you put on rails in any gun, you put on the top. But for the sake of just following instructions, we'll start with the bottom. And I did safety check this rifle is empty. So to install these rails, since you're not going to be using that handguard cap, all you got to really worry about is the barrel nut. So you'll see a little lip right here. That just needs to get over the little points here, that barrel nut. You can actually just do this probably with your hands. You don't need any kind of tool, but you probably would have needed one anyway to get off your original handguard. So I'd recommend just buying one of these, 15 bucks. But if you don't have one of those, if you have like a pair of vice grips, you can use this as well. If you go around like this, just put a little pressure and then just pull down. It's not as easy, but it's an option in case you don't have a tool. But I'm just gonna use my bare hands for this one. So again, just gonna get that lip over that that part of the barrel nut in there, and there you go. And it should, the delta ring should slide over it. See, and then the top part, it's gonna be the same deal. And there we go. Now at this point, just make sure that it's even, and it's gonna rotate a lot. So you'll see up there, there's nothing keeping it in place. So it's supposed to rotate. And it's also even gonna move a little bit side to side like that. So that's one of the challenges of actually installing this rail, is that the instructions don't really tell you how to get this thing properly aligned. You know, there's nothing really to guarantee the pitch is 100% aligned. So a typical free-floated rail that has its own barrel nut, there's only one way it can get put on. It's going to be absolutely straight and always absolutely aligned with that upper receiver. But the problem with this one is that, like I said, it can be any which way and you know, it's kind of rotating like this. So, but yeah, if you follow along, then you should get it pretty darn close to being 100% aligned with everything. So from this point, get these screws installed. And this is the easy part. I wouldn't worry about over tightening right now. Just get it snug, just until you feel a little bit of resistance, because once we get all 4 of them on, you can just do another round and make sure that they're in place pretty good. I know I said over tighten earlier. Screws, you should never over tighten them. I guess what I meant is more just, you know, securely locked in place. But typically with screws, just once you feel resistance, give it maybe a quarter turn, but don't ever over tighten any of these screws. And the same goes for the 4 that are going to go in the barrel nut. Okay, so those are all in. Again, I'm just going to do another round. Make sure they're all pretty snug in there. All right, great. So yeah, that is those 2 pieces are glued together. They're not going to go anywhere. The only movement is going to be just in regards to the barrel nut. And this is the part I struggled with when I originally did this, because I felt like the instructions, they weren't really that helpful, or as helpful as they could have been. So basically, to do this, we're going to start with the top 2. And this is going to move the pitch of the rail upwards. And then when we move on to the bottom 2, is going to move back downwards. Now, while you're doing this, again, that pitch of the rail could go any which direction, so side to side and even diagonally. So while I'm doing the top 2, I keep an eye on this part of the rail that aligns with the upper, because that tells me that it's aligned, you know, rotationally. So make sure that rotational alignment is in check as you're doing this. And then that alignment can also go side to side. You know, it could go like left or right. So a way to check on that as you're screwing it in is just look at the handguard cap. So make sure that it kind of looks aligned. You can also tell with the gas tube. The gas tube should just be, you know, directly in the middle of that top rail. And then at the end, we'll worry about the vertical rotation to make sure that it's aligned with the whole upper and that it's not going either 2 up or 2 down. So the way to do that is that if you, again, just focus on the top 2 and then worry about the bottom 2 after, then it should sort of take care of itself. Another thing to do is to keep the tightness the same. There's going to be a lot of turns, so it's going to be hard to like count that they have the same amount of turns, but when you get to the end, you can just feel the resistance. Just make sure that the resistance is about the same. If you are noticing that even if the resistance is the same, it's still looking a little bit, you know, pitched left or right, then just adjust either one, because when you adjust one, it'll release tension and let it kind of fall back in place. So we'll do that right now and just see what that looks like. And then again, it's gonna be the same steps for the bottom 2. And then you can just take like a flat edge, like a ruler, and make sure that it aligns properly here. So that way it tells you that it's all in the correct placement. So to get these in, it is kind of a nuisance. I kind of just use my fingers first, and these are probably going to drop a lot. So make sure that you're on top of a surface where these are easy to find or easy to pick up, because if it's like a carpet, for example, then it's easy to lose this. And we're going to make some clockwise turns. Once you get it set in, it's not going to move. So that's just the first step. And while you're doing this, you can turn on a podcast or something. This took me a long time at first, maybe like 40 minutes. Now it takes me about like 10 to 20. But it's just a lot of turns because you only have about 45 degrees of rotation. So it's just really monotonous. Okay, so the top two are tightened. That alignment's looking pretty good. And it's also looking pretty good with the front side as well. So at this point, it really doesn't move that much. You'll start to notice that it's pretty tight. And let's see, the pitch, the vertical pitch looks also pretty good. I didn't tighten them too much. I think when I do the bottom two, I'm just gonna go around again and kind of finish off the top ones, but they're pretty snug. So doing the bottom two is just the same process. Okay, so I've gotten them all pretty snug now. And to finish up, again, we just checked the alignment of everything. And this time it looks pretty good. I didn't really have to make any fine adjustments anywhere. One way to check that this is vertically aligned, you can just take like any kind of straight edge. This is an Apple keyboard I have, and just line it up, and yeah, that looks pretty spot on. If you do have to make any changes, again, you can just loosen or tighten any one of these. Again, don't over tighten these screws. I think the instructions even say that. So just until you feel resistance, that's really all you got to go. So this is the finished product. This is pretty much what you got. This is the handguard cap I was talking about. I guess on second thought, it's not really that big of a deal in terms of like that gap there. These, if you do have an M4 cut cap, these are actually pretty sharp. Now, I've never ever like poked myself on that while shooting, so it's probably something you never got to worry about, but it's just something to kind of think about. So yeah, that's pretty much the finished product. You can see how thin it is from the top. From the side, it looks pretty thick, but on the top, it's pretty thin. So some people like that. For me, I got long fingers, so I kind of like having more of something for my hand to wrap around. But yeah, it's a pretty good upgrade to your rifle. In conclusion, like I was saying earlier, honestly, if you are not going to be shooting this or any Magpul furniture, I wouldn't waste your money on anything else that's out there. I mean, I know Midwest Industries makes some good stuff. I keep bringing them up as an example, but you know, there's a lot of other drop-in rails in the market. If you're spending that much money anyway, because a lot of those are already over $100, just get this one. Again, not for the fact that it's free floated, but just for the fact of how solid it is. Some people, you know, they don't like how this handguard cap is now just kind of useless, and also this delta ring is just kind of sitting there, not really being used for anything. But you know, in a way, you can think of this is in a way it's like a drop-in rail, but it's really just free floating the barrel. So it's kind of like a in between of a drop-in and a free float. But it's a nice product. I mean, I'm glad Dan of the Fence has this out there for carbine builds, because you know, while accuracy isn't like the main concern of rifles like this, it's just nice to have something that's like really well put together. But yeah, if you are looking for any other quad rail, I would either consider, I mean, if you're considering something else besides this, again, this Night Armament is probably the best way to go. So that is everything. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it useful. That's all I got. If there's any other reviews on stuff out there that you think would be helpful, let me know. I got a lot of stuff kind of accumulated over the years, so just drop a comment, and I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.